Hello to everyone. Welcome to H&D Abroad. I am Herman, and so glad to have you with us here today. If you're in the comments, ask you to announce yourselves. Let us know that you're here so we can acknowledge you. Here at H&D Abroad, on this channel, we help Black couples to see moving abroad as a plan A for a healthy lifestyle and building generational wealth. We do that through sharing our personal journey to move abroad as we try to find a place that is like home for us, and as we share our experience as a couple. Looking forward to having a conversation with you today. Again, if you're there, let us know that you're there. Shout us out. Let us know. Hit us in the comments. If you come on later, if you don't make the live today and you come on later, please hit hashtag replay and drop some comments for us and let us know you came through. Always looking for a good conversation. So if you come in today, make sure you put your questions in. If what we're doing here on your show, on our channel sounds like something you're really into, please remember to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so that you can know when we go on live. Like today, we go live every Saturday at 1 o'clock, and we always are happy to have you here with us. All right, so our topic today is roadblocks for married expats. What are some things that being married can cause some hiccups, as it were, in the move abroad process? Black expats in Panama. Hola, good to see you. Glad you're here. We're jumping right in. So if you got any questions, please share them with us. All right. So the first thing on our conversation process today is when you have one of the people in one of the couple, one of the pair, one of the partners is the natural move abroad lead. Okay, so there's always one person who has a lot of the information, does a lot of the research. It's like that with a financial person. You know, you got two people in your family and one person is more of a financial person than the other. So that person really gets into, building the money and building the taxes. In the move abroad process, you can have somebody who leads in the process. So somebody who kind of offers where you're going to go and what you might be looking for in your scouting trips and finding out the information for getting the visas. In my family, that is Miss D. She is on it, and I try to keep up. And I've noticed that a lot of the couples that we follow, a lot of times the wife is the guiding lead with finding information, because finding that information helps build, that security on what we're looking at. But sometimes it's the guy in the family. Well, the problem often happens with that is if one person is leading and the other person isn't as engaged in the process, then you have a gap in what information might be if there's a communication gap. That's a big thing. What's going on, Agent Grateful? Good to see you. We're talking today about roadblocks for married expats, for those coming in. Let us know you're in, ask questions. So when you have a move abroad lead, you have somebody who is really digging into finding that information. Well, then what happens then is one of the things that happened when D got all our paperwork together. I mean, she organized our structure. She built a folder for us of all the paperwork we were going to need when we were getting our visa process done out in Mexico. Everything was laid out, but she kept me fully in the loop with all the information that she found. I rehearsed it with her. I went over that information. I checked that information, which was a benefit because when we got to the visa process in Mexico, we had a paper confusion that got pushed because of some of our interaction with our facilitator. And that interaction caused a big disruption in the process. Luckily, because we had conversated about it and talked about it regularly and gone over the process, I was able to engage in that process and help bring that back to the middle. So rather than her, being stressed and my son and I just standing there looking crazy because we know what was going on, we were able to be a part of the process. But I've heard people say, we got down there and I had to do this, and we got there to do the process and I had to do that. And that can be frustrating because you're on different pages. This is absolutely true. So Black expats in Panama said, patience is required because you might reach the same conclusions at different times. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It could be a matter of understanding. Just how do I process the information? D is quick. She sees down the road, so she jumps on. What are we doing with that? What are we doing? And sometimes I process through the information a little longer before I'm understanding where we're going, why we're doing that, what's the understanding. Sometimes my logical mind gets in the way of just raw information. So when you have a move abroad lead, you want to make sure that both people are part of the conversation. Both people are engaging in, what's this process? What are we looking for? What you don't want to have is, again, in this process, you want to avoid everybody's doing what one person wants to do, because then it's not a collaborative process. And then you run the risk of, I don't want to be here. I don't like this space. I don't like what's going on. So you want to make this a collaborative process, even if one person is stronger in the process. All right. So the next point is in the actual visa process. Each country that you apply for a visa has its own process, its own standards, its own expectations. And that process not only is viable in setting up, but in what happens down the road once you are residents. Give you an example. You want to be aware of what the renewal process is. There was a couple that we heard of where the male spouse died, passed away. And there was a time frame in which the wife was supposed to announce that the husband had passed, because they had applied for their visas under his financial status. When she got to the renewal year, a year later, and tried to renew, they told her she wasn't a resident and she had to leave because she had missed the window of announcing that process so that it could be renewed with her in mind. There are so many times when I hear about spouses here in the States, especially, a spouse dies and one person was responsible for all the paperwork, responsible for the putting together the process and inserting the information, and they paid the bills and they took care of the wills and the trust and all of those and all of that information. And then when they pass, the other spouse doesn't know what that information is, doesn't know how to access it, and have lost property if there isn't information that allows for that information to be full. Like, all I have to do is go down and announce this information. And so you got a person who is left out in the cold. You do not want to be left out in the cold in another country. You do not want to find out that you've got less than 30 days to move because you did not renew a process. If a spouse has to go back to the States, or if a spouse gets sick, or if you lose your job, there are so many things that apply to what is a part of the visa process that, again, as we said in the first part, if you're not a collaborative part of that process, then you're left out in the cold. Things happen in relationships that change, that are circumstantial, that are unexpected. People can get sick, people can pass, relationships change, financial statuses change. And if both people aren't a part of what is going on in this conversation, what is going on in this move, then you run the risk of then trying to pack up a whole house or disseminate all your information. And when you think about how long it took to break down, um, we talk about decluttering here in the States to build up to our process to move. Imagine having to suddenly move when you are in another country all by yourself. That can really be um, a frustrating process. Yeah, I agree with you, Agent Grateful. There is a stronger level of trust that has to happen when living abroad, and communication is key. So often, your partner, and we're going to touch on that, so often in a lot of cases, your partner is the person you know, is the person you have to share with. And as we have shared on many occasions, moving abroad can be a real eye opener to where you are in a relationship. Um, if you aren't in the practice of having conversations about what you're looking for and what is important to you and where you're going in the process, and things go awry, then you run the risk of there are relationships that have come apart. We hear Cortez Ross from Move Abroad and Thrive talk about all the time about this couple came down here and they didn't have their process together, and not only did they go home, they broke up. This couple, one spouse stayed and the other spouse left because there wasn't a cohesive decision making in the process on where you're going with this process. Which leads us to social engagement. My wife is my best friend. She is the person I enjoy sharing most of my time with. But I also am okay making friends. Now, I'm recognizing as I get older that um, engaging in that process, men, we're pretty easygoing with each other, but building bonding relationships, hanging out relationships, we have reasons why we do and why we don't. Um, and a lot of what you hear in the move abroad process is um, the expat life. We're going to hang out, and we're at this social engagement, and we're at this party, and we're hanging out here, and we're doing this, and there are people who are fully into that process, fully. I mean, there are couples who get in and they go out and they hang out. But what if you have a partner that is a little more reserved socially, or is a lot more reserved in large bodies of people? They're not comfortable in large bodies of people. You really want to be able to say, how comfortable can I be in this process? Miss D?
Yeah, that social engagement part. For
Uh-oh, froze up there a little bit. Still working through. But yeah, you really want to be able to, can you hear me?
yeah,
Go ahead, sir.
I want to definitely make sure that people understand one partner can be like me, really socially cautious, maybe even feel socially awkward. But what I'm finding is in an emergency situation, you need to know some folk. You need to trust some people. So, moving out of your comfort zone to get to know people, to give them an opportunity to get to know you is important. The reason why I mention that is aging grateful. They have a story where Cedric was gone and Bobby was home and the unimaginable emergency happened. I would not have thought about that. I would have thought, it's two of us. Um, if I have an accident and I need to get myself to the emergency room, I need to get myself to, to some kind of care provider that, hey, my partner is, no, you got to have a couple of people that you trust that you can call day or night. These are friends of theirs that took Bobby to the hospital. They stayed with her and made sure that she was comfortable while her husband was still had gone back to the States till he could get back. Y'all, that's the kind of social connection and social engagement. I think we have to think one step past. My husband is my backup.
And to expand on that, Dee has done better with that than I have, to be honest. Now, mind you, we have interviewed quite a few couples on our show, and the fellas and I, we cool, but we hit at each other. We bounce at each other. Hey, how are you doing? Where, the ladies. Dee has really gotten into an engagement with the ladies that I think, I will say out loud, has a lot to do with the growth of this channel and has provided her an engagement that does not require us to be together. Now, mind you, I'm the one, as much as she's the one that's socially cautious, I'm the one that is socially cautious alone. I can do couples because she's my safety net, but I'm more socially cautious alone. I'm more socially cautious about the environment and how I come off, because she puts her hand on my head and keeps me he keeps me in check. We appreciate you thinking that we're awesome, Asian Grateful. Hey, Savangale. But it requires, I am the initiator socially, but I'm the one that also has learned over time to create, barriers on how to let people in. Where she comes in more cautiously, and when she steps into relationships, she's more. So we balance each other out when we're together, but it's a different task when you're alone. And building those relationships, as you said, really helps with, if I'm by myself in this situation, do I have somebody to help me if my partner is not available? So I'll let you do some shout out.
I thought you would lean a little bit deeper into that trust. Trust, Davis, because we're talking about somebody that might need to have access to your home in an emergency. Due to the pandemic, somebody might need to come to help you or get some documents.
And I guess unfortunately, and I'm glad you said it out loud, because I think unfortunately a lot of times, especially as men, trust is an unspoken conversation. I'm not letting you near my wife if I don't trust you. You're just because you're nice doesn't mean you get to come. We have where we live. We just had a new neighbor move in today. So around us in the houses that are in our area still being developed, we have 5 neighbors around us. 4 of those sets of neighbors just moved in within the last 3 months. And I'm being generous. It's probably within the last 2 months. Okay. If I need to be away from my house, I'm not contacting them about the fact that I'm away. Maybe the neighbor who lives across from us, because he moved in when we did. Mm-hmm. We've built some level of, and I'm using that word, trust. Hey, keep an eye on the house. But we're not at a point where I need him to come in my house if I'm not here.
I see some folk that live abroad, y'all. I love your comments, but I need you all to chime in about how you are developing trust. Miss Charlotte from Black Expats in Panama is in the chat, y'all. She is what I would consider to be like our OG of Move Abroad. And we didn't get a time on the the godmothers of Move Abroad to actually talk about building trust with the people around you. People develop trust. If you've got a facilitator, if you've got somebody like Miss Charlotte in Panama, uh, um, Jewel and Jean in Ecuador, a lot of people, because they go through that process with someone who literally gives them that soft landing. Donna and Sonia in Querétaro and Jalisco, these are people who are saying, hey, we will help you, but they can't be your only trust factor. Engaging people, getting to know people, that is a frontier that I haven't had to adjust to in the States, that like I'm gonna have to have a strategy when we leave for doing that. So I mean,
This is a big deal. Okay. Agent Grateful says with their community of people, they have sets of keys to each other's homes. Woo!
ooh, yeah,
You touching a nerve. You touching the woo.
because it's
I'll leave you the
both of
keys.
us.
I'll leave you and Bobby the keys, but I Miss Charlotte can have some keys, but it's a whole lot of people gonna be standing outside saying, doesn't look like anybody's inside your house.
Look, what we realize in Mexico is you have to bring your own food to the hospital. You have to bring your own linen. So that social engagement, and not just what am I willing to get from a relationship, y'all. That also means I need to be willing to give. And that's a real sense of community. Y'all are talking about tribe. Yes. Tribe means I've got skin in the game, just like I'm asking you to have skin in the game. And I don't know. I mean, the US is a very individual society. And y'all, that is not, if you didn't watch, is Blacksit the next great migration with Krishan Wright? She said something that y'all I didn't have to sit with since Juneteenth. She said, Black people don't move like that in the world. And I had to take a deep breath to say, you know what? I got to go back to, we are Black people. We know how to be in community, and we've got to develop some levels of trust to be able to say, no, I don't know where I'm going. I need to ask directions, gentlemen.
Hey, let me throw in shots.
Hey, Mr. Davis, in a minute.
I'm not getting lost. I'm asking directions. Yes, I'll drive, but she navigates. But I mean, the communities. Simongale is mentioning that the Cartes mentioned on his show. He's always talked about he had some issues at the beginning and he got locked up. But because he built community, somebody came and brought him some food. Because you hear about the Mexican jails, they're not trying to, make it a luxury spot for you. All right, Miss Charlotte, we see you gotta go. We'll catch up with you too.
Absolutely.
Building social trust leads me to, hold on, I'm going to add this next one on here. I'm going to add this one on here, and because all of these are intertwined and we're bouncing between them. I'm putting them up separately, but all of them are intertwined. Safety is not just I walk down the street and am I safe, but there's also that I'm with people by myself who I don't know, and talking about this social engagement. Do I feel safe? Do I feel safe in this group of people who may have invited me to this engagement because I'm not with my significant other? There are times it's just, you heard me say, it's I can engage alone. I'm a full engager. I'm the extrovert. But there are certain levels of group engagement that I will bring to a minimum if my wife is not around. The male in me, and I'm just gonna put it out there. The male in me is naturally cautious in a room where there's mostly women. Not because I think I'm going to do anything wrong, not because I think I'm going to be propositioned, but because we have been trained to be afraid of being male. We're going to do something inappropriate. We're going to say something wrong. We're going to suggest something. We're going to look bad. And I just want to be a guy in a space. And so you learn to be cautious. Okay, it's not enough guys here for me to hang out with. There's not enough married men for me to hang out with. I got to go. So a lot of times,
and the same for me. And that, I think it's the way we were raised. I mean, we're from the South, but also there are things that a lady does, and learning to be in trusting relationships with people means you do consider your safety first, but I'm having to reinvestigate some of the things that I've grown up with to make sure that they are still in alignment with me as a 50 plus woman, me in a new country, me navigating new spaces. Like Miss Charlotte said, it's time. We can learn a new thing. We can learn a new thing. But y'all, I mean, Herman says, look, I don't have my back to the room. I mean, those New York, Detroit, South Florida skills, I have come to rely on.
When I walk into a space, you've heard me talk about it when I've had the men on. Eugene from our Exodus Life was a cop, and he talks about when he and alum walk into a room. Listen, if my back can't be to the corner and I can't see the room in front of me, I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm a little uncomfortable. I need to see what's coming. Even if the space I'm in doesn't necessarily allow me to run, I need to be able to see what's coming. And you learn so many of these default characteristics of safety and engagement. And then like Dee said, if one person is always responsible for that, how much do you do that when you're on your own? Dee, do you sit with your back to the room or outside the room when you're alone?
We've been together 20. Well, no, we've been together 30 years. Look, I have learned a lot from this gentleman. I have learned a lot. And the learning comes from I have to use my left and my right brain. I have to admit that there are things that I know and a lot that I don't know. And I think the safety conversation, in more than just, a person danger, is also environmental. I am looking not just to my partner, but to a tribe, to a community. Okay, so we got our folk in Panama, we've got our folk in Ecuador, we've got our folk in different places where natural disasters are a real thing. If we have, as a matter of fact, I was, what was it, in Mexico, a building being on fire. Y'all, if we're in a situation where there is a natural disaster, a community emergency, I think we need to be talking about having some kind of emergency plan where we as a community, as a Black expat community, as an expat community, can say, hey, this is our meetup point. September, we'll be talking about disaster preparedness. But if you don't have your Go backpack when you move abroad, you need to get one. You need to have copies of your documents. You need to have, backup medications. Y'all, I'm talking about, like, look, the safety aspect is not only am I safe in a situational kind of thing, but I want to be intentional about building community outside of my partner, so that if we have to rally, we're talking about like for some days. I want some folk that have some military background. I want some folk that know how to identify some healing herbs. I want to get to know the community members who have some medical training, or I need to be ready to share my own. Dr. Tijuana is in the chat. Herman just popped up. Y'all, when I met, we talked on Messenger one time. When we got to the airport, it was like sister love. And we hadn't even met Sabangale, but I was just like, you're going where we're going. Come on, sis. And we got together. We created a barrier. Okay, that's a whole joke in and of itself. When we were in the airport in Istanbul,
And,
but your people will look out for you, and that's the community.
and that was inspiring for me. Us as Rashida called us Exodus honeys that were there in the vicinity. I spent time with a couple of the husbands that were there and really got it. I mean, you meet people for the first time, you never kind of know how that's going to go. And when you're in those, what I call secluded environment opportunities where, this is not, we're going to meet here today and I go back to my house. We might be here in each other's space for a few days. And if I engage you too strongly and I don't like you, then I don't know, I don't have nowhere to go. And you have to be able to say, you know what? What's the appropriate way for moving forward in an engagement without an expectations that this has to be the friendship of a lifetime? But I actually built what I thought was some really positive interactions with some gentlemen who were there. And with the gentleman who I've interviewed on the last 3 men conversations, I really enjoy getting to know. And I tell him, here's my number. Call. I got my plug in my ear and we ride and talk. And that's rare for me. I have very few friends. I have very few people who I confide in here. And you're asking me to build a confidence base with people who I didn't know prior to, Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. And I have to trust that the interaction that we're building is beyond the honeymoon stage. That these are real people that I'm engaging. So that's a building point.
I think what I want to make sure that I'm expressing in this space is a respect for your personality, a respect for the caution that I think that we as a Black culture have to move through in the world. We have to have that second set of eyes. We've talked before about checking yourself, checking the bias that you're bringing from the US. But I think what I want to make sure that people are hearing is that sometimes the marriage relationship gives that backup thought process, that with the intention that you're giving to choosing the right country, when you're doing your country shopping, choosing your apartment, the kind of work, if you're kind of like us, that's mid-career, the kind of work that you can travel with, that you are also being intentional about engaging the people around you, as whether that is a short-term engagement, because we've talked about doing some slow travel. So, I'm going to have to develop these muscles that, sometimes I feel like, because of my cautious nature, take more than a few weeks to develop. So, I'm not trying to tell everybody my business when I first meet them, so that I can gauge if they're trustworthy, if they're a part of my safety network. But I at least need to identify someone, because most of us weren't thinking about the pandemic. There were a lot of people that are travel hearted that got stuck in places in the world that you may not have had weeks to, or months to develop, a relationship with. So, Yeah, this is a muscle that is, I think, developed through intention. I think um, me needing to be recognizing the spaces where I feel really independent and I'm really strong, and Herman has leaned in with me in those areas. I also need to recognize, girl, you're gonna have to move it on up and get more comfortable and competent in this process, because it's more, as they say, it's more than a notion to just want a thing. To incorporate it into your life, it has to be intentional.
The pandemic was a really great example, D. Um, you know, I am prone to speaking to the people around me, so neighbors and even in the grocery store. I'm prone to speaking to people, trying to be polite and speak to people by name. The pandemic narrowed down where I could spend time and and the people with whom I could interact regularly. And during that time, we got to know our neighbors. Now, mind you, we had chats with them, walking outside, getting in the car, passing by, walking up and down the yard. But when you and your neighbors are in the neighborhood for months at a time, and everybody's standing outside, you build a different relationship. And I realized that things don't have to rush. I don't, like I said a minute ago, you don't have to, just because we met today, we have to build a lasting friendship today. Everything, I have the right to take my time to get to know the people I come in contact with and to build those relationships and trust. And that is my responsibility to myself. And when I make that responsibility to myself, it builds a better opportunity when my wife and I are together with people, either singularly or in couples or in group settings, that it can also make her comfortable, and the opposite is also true. So she can introduce me to people and I feel okay being around that space with whatever the environment, whatever the population is.
Absolutely. If there are tips or advice, so a lot of people are talking about trust, building trust. If there are some strategies that you're using, um, put them in the chat. There is, let's see. So for me, building trust, um, you know, I want to see you move in the world. So I might do more community activities when we land. I might
Mhm.
want to, go out for drinks. I might want to make sure that I'm going to the welcome dinners that we've seen in Lisbon, in Portugal. I might want to make sure that I'm introducing myself in the group. Hey, we're going to be on the ground, so and so and so. We'd love to get to know you. Maybe becoming the person that's hosting something. Yeah, the cautious me says I know I need to do those things. I think within a specific amount of time, I want to make sure that I'm doing more than just, making sure we've got our housing, that we understand the transportation, but that, like, on my checklist of when we land, what we do is to make sure that we are either hosting or finding out what activities are happening. If you all are not in Facebook groups, in Reddit groups, in countries where you're thinking about landing, get in them, get in them now. Because, Puerto Vallarta, man, y'all are kicking down there with the weekend music and, the
If we,
in the
we,
Mexico resident, let's see, in the Mexico City group, that's how we found out about the soul food restaurant that opened up. So yeah.
we know we know where we're sliding through when we come through. All right. So this point, and this is the last one I have on the list, and we can kind of go through some of the others again if we need. This is the last one I have on the list, and And we've talked about this several times in several of our presentations before. Knowing what your partner's medical wishes are in relationship to the move abroad process. You live abroad, they get sick. What do they want to happen? How do they want their care? Where do they want to get care? At what level? You know, have you had that conversation? We shy away from, especially as people of color, we shy away from uncomfortable conversations. And often those conversations are health, sex, death, and money.
And money.
But health, sex, death. And in our family, we have had instances of limited information that after a crisis, if we you say, well, if I had known, if you had shared that with me, then I could have made these decisions. Holly and Sean of Island Time Adventure were on with us, and Holly said she found out after her father had been in the hospital a while that he was sick. They didn't even contact them to say that they were that he was in the hospital. And I know of spousal situations where one spouse is going through some medical stuff and the other person doesn't share. And if you are outside the country,
this is okay. So the reason why we put medical wishes on the list is a topic that we're going to dive deeper into next week. So things that people should have just as a life, your life documents, as I'm calling them. So your advanced directives. So if you cannot speak for yourself, you have designated a person that you have personally vetted and that they know what your wishes are and the kind of care that you want to be received. So when you have to make different decisions, I mean, and that's, there are wide variety, not just end of life, but, you know, how you want to be cared for. This needs to be somebody who you spent time talking and sharing those, you know, those uncomfortable details with, but are totally necessary. Because as a person who has witnessed, what if this person does this person have a do not resuscitate? And you have family members who are like going to war in a medical ward. That's not what you want. That's not what you want. Things like a will. I don't care if you have a cell phone and nothing else. People will fight over I have seen in families where they have fought over a Bible, like cussing, fighting, these kind of decisions. When you don't make your wishes known, it causes a huge rift. So it needs to happen in more than just, I've told my partner. You need to let the other family members know things like, I want to be cremated. In Black culture, a lot of people not down with that.
Yeah.
I'm in another country. What you have to do to get your body shipped back to the States, you want to understand that process more. So we're going to continue this this conversation, because the added layer is not only should you have them, and a lot of us are what do you call that? We are having documents notarized and signed in the States, but will those documents be honored outside the US? Do they need to be apostilled? Do they need to be translated? Will they be honored? Is there documentation that is in alignment with the country that you're going, so that someone can come and can take care of you. Your medical wishes, even if you are single. Adelia Aborashade, Picky Girl Travels, blew my mind the first time she mentioned you need to have your person. Your person is somebody that, just like these other things we've talked about, they may have a key to your place, because she talked about, I cannot remember the name of the episode, but she had a young lady that had gotten sick, and like she forgot her phone. The best she could do was call an Uber to get herself to the hospital, and then she was literally passed out for weeks. If you've got a family member who you're saying they can come to where you are, you do not want to have a person that doesn't have a passport. You do not want to choose a person who may not have funds. So you may have to have a travel card that they are on, where they can make a plane, get a plane ticket and come to you. We're going to talk about like the real steps, the people you should be connecting to, so that even if you've done these kinds of documents in the US, they need to be ready for engagement in the country or countries where you're thinking about spending more of your time.
And I want to clarify something. We're looking at these points from the viewpoint of, I've shared these things with my spouse. So this is things that I do with my spouse. And the absence of the spouse being there for whatever reason causes a disruption that you didn't plan for. So you and the spouse have talked about what your medical wishes are. Nobody else knows. Or you and your spouse designate another family member to take care of you and your spouse's wishes, and nobody else knows. One of my close friends was responsible for his parents, one of his parents, when they passed, their affairs, and he's not the oldest. Mm-hmm. He's the middle child of several children, and that didn't go well. And he had to prove that he wasn't randomly making decisions, that he was asked to make those decisions. And I think in part also he assumed that everybody knew. So he was simply fulfilling his responsibility to his family, and ended up in the middle of a pretty bad situation. And you don't want that to happen. So if Dee and I decide, after we get to a certain age, we want to designate one of our children to be the executor of our situation, even if the other spouse is alive, we want so-and-so to take care of it. That way the other person doesn't have to deal with that. Our other children should be aware of that situation. They should be aware of that. Yeah, we would sit down with the three of them and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. And in our situation, I more than likely would have each of them responsible for a part. So if everybody's responsible for something, then somebody's not left out, doesn't feel left out because they're not responsible for anything. That's not always possible. That's not always the case. And in most situations, it does stay between the spouse. But
you need to have multiple layers. You need to have a plan A. If my spouse is my plan A, then I do need to have a B and a C.
Correct.
I need to have a B and a C. Even things like having someone that is, putting your things in a trust. Y'all, we need to be thinking about these larger issues. And I know that our target population is in a certain demographic that, most of us are starting to say, I'm not a spring chicken. I probably have more years behind me than in front of me, but that today is the best day to take action, to shore up your plan, that you should be adding these kinds of conversation about what am I doing to make sure that my move abroad process doesn't leave me hanging in a way. Does I am shoring up obvious vulnerabilities. So we're bringing forward. Yes, Sabangale, that power of attorney. I was trying to remember what it was called. Power of attorney. So we're going to have somebody that has worked in this area to talk about it. But yeah, I don't know if your US power of attorney will apply in other countries. So those are the questions you should be asking. It's I don't know. I mean, several of you all that I see have worked with an attorney that's a facilitator. Maybe you add this to your checklist of questions. And definitely asking when you get your health insurance, and y'all, please don't go to these countries wilding out and don't get no kind of health care coverage.
And I want to add this too. If you move abroad as a couple, individually be responsible for learning the language. This should not just be my partner's always with me. They've learned the language better than me. They've learned the language. I depend on them. Then what happens if something happens to them? And you're in a place where learn the language for yourself. Some of us are going to be better, more proficient at learning the language than others. That's just what it is. I'm learning that I've been. I had some.
Are you getting ready to admit your advanced Spanish?
Don't even play with me. I don't even play. I had some introduction to Spanish when I was in the 8th grade. I had Spanish in 11th and 12th grade. I had an advanced Spanish class that I had to take my last year of college. I speak zero Spanish. And what I learned recently is in a space, I rely so much on visual cues that I can tell what's going on and what they're trying to communicate. But I struggle with the words moving fast enough through my hearing in the conversation. And I may have to start learning Spanish through listening and not through looking. When we landed in Mexico, I could point to things, and I imagine I had any Spanish in 20 years, 25 years, but I could point to things and say the words in Spanish. Identifying Spanish and Spanish words and translating, no problem for me. The conversation is like it just bounces off the side of my head.
Amen for Google Translate.
Hey,
you know what I'm saying? Amen. But babe, if the internet goes down, I need to know. All I knew that I needed to know was baño, baby, and that the M was for mujeres. Yes.
not men.
The right bathroom.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Those things are important. And you may share that information, you may share that process, but that language class, D is doing Rosetta Stone. I got to sit down and figure out how learning the Spanish works for me. What is going to make it after these 90 years of working on Spanish? What is going to make Spanish work for me? Because I truly and honestly desire, when we're in Spanish-speaking countries, whether it is Latin America or Spain or any other country, that I feel confident walking down the street alone, walking into a space and not going, do you speak English?
Absolutely.
Or relying on my Google Translate.
Let's see. So Rick and Halisi have given us an idea. If this audience wants to see us do, what is it like? What skills do adult language learners need to know so that they are able to absorb their new language better? Please let us know in the chat if y'all want us to talk about it, because I just feel like I have different needs. I didn't know that there are auditory learners, that there are lots of resources like, what is it called? News in slow, and the news in slow Russian, news in slow Spanish. And that is a resource that I can use even Netflix, I can turn off, I can keep the subtitles, but definitely not trying to have it translate, use the English dubbing so that I'm listening to the words, listening to the patterns. Because even with some of my friends that are in country, they're just like, if they could just slow down just a little bit, I might be able to catch up. So hopefully, oh yes, and Cambly, there, I want to learn from
Oh,
native
yeah.
speakers. I think I need to be learning with a native speaker. And y'all, what really is, I think, going to make a difference for me is actually just being in the country and having to do the basic things. Because there's the learning you're going to do on these platforms, and then the reality of what's going to happen on the ground. So I am so thankful, that we can have the conversation about, some additional friction points that couples that are moving abroad, some broader considerations that could be barriers if you are taking, the experience for granted, that your partner is your backup, that your partner, that you don't need to, move outside of, your marriage bond to develop trust, to, develop community. My experience, this move abroad experience, is so much richer, and it's also keeping me totally accountable. People are sharing. If you are
Hmm.
not in on these people, Aging Grateful, if you're not on their page, you're learning. Look, that you're trying to find the ultimate apartment. No, because you might pick 2 or 3 different places over the course of your first year.
So,
Give
Bangale, this is
yourself
why you know your partner.
flexibility.
Know your partner. Yes. Yes.
You know what? And that, I think, is another an important fact, Davis. I don't think I heard you mention it at the very beginning, but that understanding that there are things that people, and that I'm ready for, that I'm not ready for, that, look, I'm not going to budge. I need to live in a city. I need to have a vehicle. I mean, these are things, when you are honest with yourself and honest with your partner, then you guys can come up with strategies that work best for y'all. I am so, so, so glad. Oh, Uber drivers? Okay, Agent Grateful, what about Uber drivers? So I've heard several people mention they practice their language skills with their Uber drivers. So if that's been your experience, but yeah, that, if you got a hint about, how your Uber driver is helping you lean into your process,
I
uh,
hope that's working out for you. I have a couple of Spanish speaking coworkers, and I told them, yeah, one's from Mexico, one's from Puerto Rico, and I was like, hey, I need y'all to engage me, and they're laughing at me. They're speaking to me in Spanish, and I'm going, uh-huh, uh-huh. It's a slow road for me, y'all. It's a slow road.
we have to get over our embarrassment.
Yeah.
We have to address what is blocking, a basic trust of humans, y'all. We have to address that we are moving from most of us are moving from very individualized, I have my own car. I'm a very independent minded, uh, siloed person. We are moving to countries that are community oriented. I hope that you're expanding yourself, expanding your experience, to really engage folk in that way. It Hey y'all, it's gonna be a graduated process for me. I
Hmm.
know I'm challenged in that area,
Hmm.
but I can tell you the blessing that meeting the Exodus Summit sisters online and then meeting them in person, how much that has enhanced my living, and we haven't even moved. I'm able to really feel that blessing. And I really want to encourage our community on this channel to identify those sensitive spots, see them for what they are, address them, whether that's counseling, whether that is, you know, going to a meetup, engaging yourself with new people in your home country, and then taking those skills that you have practiced before you move abroad, and then being able to implement them when you go. Let's get out of here. Thank you, Sabangale, for the
Thank
super
you.
chat, y'all. We turned on our super chats. And so we are so grateful when you say thank you in that way. So Davis.
Thank you for engaging in these conversations with us. I ask you, and in part it is self-serving, but it is for a purpose. I ask you to go back and watch some of our other videos. See them again, because there's conversations I want you all to help us create. There are things that I want to make sure that we're thinking about. Go into the comment section of those videos and add comments so that we have some things. Believe me, we are taking notes. We continue to learn in this process because of our engagement with you all, and it helps us. Like this video, like those videos. Don't just pass through. Hit the like button on them. Subscribe to the page if you haven't subscribed. If you've been coming through, it's time to subscribe, and let other people know we appreciate you much. Let's see.
Yeah, Dr. Tijuana, I wanted to make sure that y'all please use your local libraries. They are rich, rich, rich resources. So whether or not you have a specific language resource,
Okay.
your library can be a good first stop. They used to offer at my library in my hometown, they offered Rosetta Stone. Check into that. You have to go to the library. You can't use the online version, but you can go to your local library and tap into those language learning. They have books in other languages. If you want to get a book, an audio book, and then read the text at the same time as you're listening to it. I know Hoopla and what's the other one? Hoopla and Libby
Yeah.
have books in other languages. So if it would be helpful for you to read along while listening to correct pronunciation, yeah, y'all use all the resources. Use all of the resources. Thank you all.
I want to go back to this last statement here. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Because I want you to know it does not apply just to moving abroad.
Mm-hmm.
Professor LCH said she's not moving out of the country, but everyday life, when we are sharing these content, because remember, people, we still live in the States. And so we are building concepts and processes and principles and practices that we can use every day and then use them where we go. So I really want to encourage these conversations because they help us. They help us. Selfishly, they help us. And we hope in the process that we also are some level of benefit to you all, even if we're just bringing together a community who helps you find information.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to submit and do the Duolingo. I was debating between Duolingo and Babbel because I tried to use Babbel a couple of years ago. I'm gonna take my chances with Duolingo because everybody keeps saying so. But I think for me, a part of it is going to really be finding a community where I can practice, finding some people with whom I can practice. Otherwise, it's just me sitting in another class.
I know that she's dropped, but Charlotte, they host in Panama a It's like they get together at a restaurant. They invite native Spanish speakers in Panama and expats. They get together. One group practices English, and then the other group practices their Spanish. It's a great social, and I know that there are several like that in Mexico as well. Look in those Facebook groups and find out where people practicing Spanish together. We went to a class in Puerto Vallarta. So they do exist. Everybody is learning. And baby, perfection is your enemy. Please,
Absolutely.
that should never be a part of your language journey, of your meeting people journey. You're gonna make mistakes.
And I think if you're in a space where somebody's expecting that of you, you ought to take that into account. Then if you're in a space or in a country or whatever that is expecting perfection from you, or is abusive to you because of your attempts, then you need to evaluate if that space is good for you. And I'm gonna leave that right there. But you do you. We thank you.
Thank you, guys. We're so glad to see you all. Looking forward to seeing you all next week when we get into the weeds about getting your papers together. Absolutely. All right.
Hit the notification bell. We'll see y'all next week.
Don't forget to like this video, subscribe. We've got quite a few people who are watching who are not subscribed. Hit that notification bell because we go live during the week and, of course, every Saturday, 1 p.m. Central Time.
You tell them, Sabongale. Everybody ought to hit the like button. Don't sign off without hitting the like button. See y'all later.
See y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye for now.